future. There was no glimmer, no sign of what he might become. No dream, no hope, no passion. Only the hostility that came tumbling out of his mouth. Is he really part of the narcotics team? The team that turned an 11-figure profit? Saleh found it hard to believe. In the old Passione, they had been the team everyone dreamed of joining. The team that got everything they wanted, that sucked at the teat of God. They were kings of the world, with all the money and women they could ask for, able to do anything they wanted. Or so everyone thought. Yet, this kid was simple-minded, oblivious, uneducated, concerned with nothing but what irritated him the most at any given second. And right now, Saleh's gaze drifted away from Vittorio. There was a third figure in the room, sitting in the corner, barely moving enough to breathe. Her skin was shockingly pale, her lips almost as pale with only the faintest hint of red. Her figure obscured in shadows. Empty eyes stared vacantly at nothing. She was humming a song so faintly it could scarcely be heard.
La 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 la.
It was a famous Sicilian song, Vittina Crozza, I Saw a Skull. What should have been a fast, buoyant song was almost unrecognizable, so sluggish and slurred the delivery. She was young, still a girl. Her hair spilled out across the floor. It was very, very long, like she had forgotten to cut it, or forgotten this was even an option. Sitting limp on the ground, her frame was withered and frail, her pale neck trembling under the weight of her head.
New way to do ads, huh?
Her name was Angelica Atanasio. Her stand was called Nightbird Flying. It appeared to be nothing but a little bird flying around, no threat at all. But it had led Saleh and his partner Zucchero here, to this place of death. Saleh glared at Angelica with all his might, but she ignored it. This was not a display of bravado, she simply wasn't even aware of his presence. A trickle of drool ran down her chin. There was blood in it. She was bleeding from the mouth. She was obviously a junkie. But this thoughtless kid with no hope for the future, and this junkie girl with not much longer to live, these pathetic failures had driven Saleh into a corner, a fact that enraged him. He bit his lip so hard it was bleeding, but he couldn't feel the pain, and not because he was too angry to feel it. He'd been tainted by Nightbird Flying, and no longer felt pain. The world beneath his feet felt shaky. It was all he could do to remain on his own 2 feet. He felt dizzy, but the dizziness would not fade. His sense of balance would not return. Advanced movement was out of the question. None of his usual tricks were even remotely possible. A direct assault was the only option. Saleh glared at Vittorio. The boy was cutting himself again. The flat of his blade was like a mirror, and Saleh could see himself reflected in it. Saleh had been keeping an eye on the dagger. In the same way that Mr. was a gunslinger, Vittorio was a knife specialist. But in a battle between stands, an ordinary blade would be nearly useless, so what secret function did it serve? Saleh's craftwork had the ability to make objects stick where they were. He could be shot with bullets, stabbed with blades, and the moment they touched his skin, he could fix them in place and they would not harm him. So a dagger would normally be of no concern. Normally. Right. I had nothing to fear. By this point, he had lost the ability to make rational decisions. He had survived to this point by respecting the limitations of his own stand and fleeing whenever he believed himself to be in danger. But he failed to do that here. Much like Angelica, he could no longer think things through. Vittorio stopped cutting and gave him a frosty look. Come on, your stand and my dolly dagger. Which one has the right to exist? Let's find out! The moment the dagger's tip left the boy's flesh, Saleh lunged forward. If Vittorio was going to try and stab him, Saleh was going to let him. He would fix it in place.
What would be
then
the
say to the
translate?
boy's body.
What would be the
But
English
even
names
at
of these?
close distance, the blade's tip
I'll call
never
Dolly
pointed
Dagger
at him.
Dodgy
Not
Dagger.
only did he make no move to attack with the blade, he made no move at all. He just stood there, waiting, not even trying to defend.
It has the same
It was
syllables,
strange,
but
unnatural.
I don't
but
quite
Sally
like it.
was too close to
Part
stop
6.
himself now.
Part 6
He
did a
had to
really
follow
good job
through,
with the names.
and he did.
Made in
Slamming
Heaven,
his fist into
Made in
Vittorio's
Heaven,
unguarded
for
chest.
example.
He fixed the boy's heart in place.
Translated names should all be
There was
like
no
kind
way
of like
for him
that.
to avoid it. Sally had won, or so.
Although they did keep
The boys
Flaccid
raised up
Pancake.
and kicked it. Sally went flying, rolling across the ground. Impossible.
Stone Ocean, Stone Free to Stone Ocean is and Gold Experience to Golden Wind. Since those are the titles of the shows, are still pretty good as well, in my opinion.
Down his face, but he should have been dead. Sally wondered, then noticed something downright bizarre. There was something floating in the air between them. It was reddish pink and looked sticky, like meat, like an organ, small, compact, round. Sally recognized it. A heart. A heart torn out of someone's chest, fixed in space. But whose? Sally's head suddenly looked downwards. He had lost the strength to support it, and the weight of his head had pulled it down, giving him a look at the gaping hole in his chest. Sally's attack had reflected back on him, but he no longer had the time to wonder why. With no heart to pump it, his body was starved for blood, and his consciousness faded, never to awaken again. With a splat, Sally's heart fell to the ground, free of the power that held it suspended.
We won't.
Vittorio writhed on the ground in agony. Massimo! He cried, calling someone outside the warehouse. Massimo, help! The warehouse door was flung open, light poured in, and a tall man stepped inside. He was dragging something. It looked like a plastic sheet of some kind, but he dropped it when he saw Vittorio. You do something crazy again, he said, his voice like the wind whistling through a crack in the wall. My heart, stop beating right, stopping, 30% stopped. I keep warning you, Vittorio. Your Dolly Dagger can only reflect 70% of damage. You can't let just anybody hit you and expect to get away with it. As he spoke, the tall man strode over to the boy and thumped him hard on the chest, knocking Vittorio down. Angelica cackled hysterically. Christ, take it easy, Vittorio said, getting back up. He was no longer in pain. When the man touched him, all bodily functions had returned to normal. The man ignored him and walked over to Angelica. This all? He asked. She nodded.
There's nobody else around. Nobody at all. Nobody looking at us.
Then she pointed at the plastic thing he tossed aside.
Except that.
He said, looking at it. Oh, is that him? Vittorio said. Is it Kero? I heard he can deflate things. He came walking over to get a closer look. Examined it closely, it was shaped like a man-shaped balloon with the air let out of it, and it was twitching. Most of the time, you can't use your power on yourself, but this guy clearly can. Yes, and when he's flat like that, he can slip through narrow gaps and get close to his targets. That's how he and Sally made their approach. That's luck. We've got Angelica. Nobody gets the drop on us. Vittorio stamped on the flat man, grinding his foot against him. Ew, gross. He's pulsing. Even deflated, his heart still beating. Even now, my manic depressions made it impossible for him to control himself. The tall man looked down at his defeated opponent without emotion. Massimo Volpe. This was the man's name. The man so dangerous.
There's a lot more you can do with manic depression.
His existence was seen as such a problem that as long as he could be eliminated, the others.
Sure, some of these are not supposed to be uploaded, but I don't remember anymore.
He seemed the quiet type, not someone who made a strong impression. He was Italian, but of an angular, bony build that made him look more Irish. His nose
manic
was thin,
repression,
as were
panic
his eyes
depression,
and eyebrows. knows?
If we want to rhyme words that sound alike to manic and depression, I can't come up with any.
We can't torture him
But there are a lot of words that rhyme.
Talk like this. Who knows? There's no saving him now. Man, your manic depression is nasty. Textbook overkill. One final member of their team entered the room. An old man. God damn it, Massimo. I told you not to fight unless you have to. Vittorio and I can handle mooks like this. You and Angelica should let us protect you. The old man's face was covered in deep wrinkles, but his back was straight and his movements lively.
Oh, Kakaki.
Angelica said happily and wafted over to him. She rubbed her face on his thigh like a cat greeting her owner. He patted her head tenderly, but never took his eyes off Massimo. You hear me, Massimo? You're the heart of this team. We only exist for you. But you're the leader, Vladimir. I just do what you say. Massimo's heart did not appear to be in it. They had had this conversation before. I know you don't see it. Vladimir Kukaki sighed. You could rule the world, you know. With a stand like yours, you could place yourself above all other men. So could you. No one can beat your rainy day dream away. Oh, and me? My dolly dagger's pretty good too, right? We're all great. A sharp mind in an old body, a man who didn't care, a thoughtless boy, and a junkie girl. This was the narcotics team all Passione was frantically searching for. Stand name, Dolly Dagger. Owner, Vittorio Cataldi, 16. Instruction A, duration A, speed A, control B, range C, potential C. Power. 70% of damage received is transferred to whoever is reflected in the dagger's blade. The remaining 30% is received normally. The stand possesses an ancient short sword from the Napoleonic era. Reflects all damage, including bullets and viral attacks. A stand born of a strong desire to prove personal innocence and transfer blame and responsibility to others. Chapter 3, Sailor's Love, Part 1. When the assassin team member Illuso was doing his due diligence before his fight with Fugo, the report he was given read as follows. Born 1985 to a wealthy Neapolitan family. Extremely intelligent, with an IQ of 152, accepted to university at the age of 13. However, proved to be possessed of a surprisingly short temper, argued with many professors, eventually hitting one with a 4-kilogram dictionary. Expelled, the downward spiral continued until Bucciolati took him in. This summary was not mistaken, yet was not the whole story. He had been admitted to university not as a recognition of his superior mind, but in exchange for a healthy bribe. The Fugo family was not old money. They had acquired their fortune through legally questionable trade and by encouraging risky investments in Africa shortly before the Second World War that ruined their creditors but lined their pockets. We must have a title, was the oft-repeated mantra of Fugo's common-born grandfather. To achieve that goal, he married off Fugo's father to the daughter of a bankrupt noble, and the third son from that marriage was Panacotta Fugo. His elder brothers were ordinary, with nothing remarkable to their names or natures. Fugo alone showed promise from an early age. His grandfather doted him, certain he would make the family's reputation, while in turn pressuring him to succeed. He was taught everything that could be taught, and deemed to be something of a genius in virtually every field. His education was correspondingly excellent. He was incredibly skilled and mastered nearly everything put to hand, but that very excellence meant there were limits only he perceived. As their art was all, there were limits to his talents, but what mattered more to him was the limits he encountered in the arts and in academia. Music had peaked with Bach and Mozart. Sculpture and painting had peaked with Michelangelo and Da Vinci. Architecture had ended with Scamozzi and Bernini, mathematics with Gauss and Hegel. If the best of the best lived hundreds of years ago, what remains for me to do? As a child, he found this thought demoralizing. But if he attempted to express the sentiments to his tutors, they were patronizing and hostile. Fugo found himself friendless and loathed. Those around him had been born upper class, and for someone whose family had bought their title to be so obviously superior was unbearable. His sole source of solace was his grandmother. Don't worry, Panny. Things may be tough right now, but
And the anime makes it hard to adapt this little bit of the
a cake
novel.
always in the oven. She was the only person who let him relax, but the rest of the family considered her an embarrassment. She was the daughter of a farmer, matched to his grandfather before he struck it rich, stuck in her old ways, while the rest of the family strove to better themselves. If Italy had not been a Catholic country, if divorce had not been a sin, she would have been cast aside long ago. But she was the only member of the family who spoke to Panacotta Fugo from the heart. Everyone else only saw what they needed him to be.
I mean, I think both can still be true, you know?
His brothers envied the attention he received and bullied him whenever they were alone together. But his grandmother's smile made it all bearable.
Both backstories can be true.
She died. By then, Fugo was already living away from home, studying at the
They might need to change the backstory a little, but they can still both be true.
And attend her funeral, but his grandfather forbade it. There was no need. Fugo couldn't believe his ears. He took a test the day she died. He failed it. He was summoned to the professor's office. The moment he stepped in the door, the professor was furious. He believed the results showed Fugo didn't take him seriously. He was so good in all the other classes. How else could he be so bad in his? What are you thinking? This is a core subject. Take it seriously. How dare you look at me like that? Blindsided by this, Fugo admitted that his grandmother had died. This only enraged the professor further. Don't be ridiculous. Your family said no such thing. Even if it were true, it's a pathetic, childish excuse. Your grandmother? Grow up. You can't sing off the apron strings forever. By this point, Fugo was no longer listening. The next thing he knew, he picked up the dictionary on the professor's desk and was beating him over the head with it. He didn't even feel the anger. He felt no hate, no desire to kill the man. His heart was filled with a stony, implacable certainty that this man could not be forgiven. No other course of action existed. From that day forth, Fugo
the backstories are fucking incompatible, actually.
He beat up the security guards who came running and was arrested. In the interview room, the confused police explained, "We contacted your family, but they said they didn't know you. No one's coming to bail you. If they don't change their minds, you'll be sent to a home." Fugo said nothing in response. He remained silently in his cell for as long as they could hold him, until one man came to see him. He'd never seen the man before, but he was young.
This backstory is so much better.
The man said he was only 17. "My name's Bruno Bucciolati. I've been checking up on you. Seemed like you might be worth meeting." Fugo knew what he was at a glance. "You're a gangster?" he asked. Bucciolati nodded. "I am. How did you know?" "You're dressed well, but you don't seem high class. You move too well to be a student, but you don't have the posture of a soldier. What else could you be?" "I see you're as quick as they say, and as bold. You don't seem like you're afraid of me. Why is that?" "It's not that I'm not scared. Not only that, but the situation you find yourself in should be pretty terrifying. Your parents have abandoned you." Fugo laughed bitterly. "No, they're afraid of me now. If what I did gets out, they think it'll damage the family's reputation. Their only option is to disinherit me, insist I have no ties to them. They're terrified." Bucciolati frowned. "You seem awfully calm about it. Did you beat that man to hurt your parents?" "No, they never entered my mind. I simply couldn't forgive him. Or anything else." Bucciolati put his hand to his chin, thinking. "If you end up in the home, what'll happen to you?" "Nothing much," Fugo shrugged. "They'll put me through whatever the minimum educational requirements are, then put me out on the street." "So you've no intention of going home?" "Home?" For a second, Fugo didn't know what he meant. When he saw that, Bucciolati nodded. "If you've got nowhere better to go, what say you help me with my work?" At long last, Fugo realized the young gangster had been interviewing him. "You mean Join your gang. It's not mine. I'm still bottom rung. I don't even have any men to call my own. Like you said, I'm low-born. I'm a fisherman's son. My father was proud of his work, and I'm not embarrassed by it. But I'm not exactly well-educated. I need friends with knowledge and wits. Friends like you. Bucciolati looked straight into his eyes. Fugo met his gaze and held it. It was a strange sensation. He was being asked to join
They
a
entered
criminal
cards with a
organization,
servant?
to rank beneath a bottom-rung thug. Yet he reminded Fugo of his grandmother. Was it because he wasn't lying? Because he was simply stating what he genuinely felt?
This is a
You
weird build.
need me. I do. What makes you say that? When you spoke of your parents, I saw no desire for revenge. You must hate them, but not obsessively. I get worked up too easily.
Oh man,
I
they
could use the
didn't
level head around.
open the best hand, I suppose.
A level head. My temper's so short I beat a professor over the head with a dictionary. Bucciolati's eyes narrowed. He was lucky. Huh? He was lucky you didn't kill him. You'd lost it completely. You never once stopped to think that he might die. Fugo was at a loss for words. I came to see you because I wanted to look you in the eye, Bucciolati continued. I wanted to see what kind of guy you were. You had the same eyes I did when I was 12. The eyes of a killer. Whatever the reason may be, you have the eyes of someone who could kill without a second's thought. Bucciolati paused to see what effect his words were having. You have no shot at rehabilitation. That's why I'm inviting you. You can no longer live in their world. Fugo lay on an uncomfortable bed in a cheap hotel.
Okay, I get it now. I get it now. This is the game we're playing, huh? I might be screwed.
He could never have survived in the normal world, but being a member of the mob from the get-go had been such a huge advantage, it was hard to imagine what other course he could have taken. No, that's not true. I've seen that fate with my own eyes. Fugo had seen a boy whose life had been very much like what Fugo's could have been.
That's 3 servants out of the way.
If I hadn't. A knock on the door interrupted his reverie. The door was open, but Sheila-E knocked anyway. Hello, I'm knocking, she said. Fugo sat up and looked at her. She jerked her chin at him. Come, they sent the reinforcements. Fugo stood up and headed down the hall. Sheila-E followed him, letting him lead. Why'd you leave the door open? Anyone could get in. Can't hear people coming if I shut it. You claustrophobic? Fugo didn't respond. I hear your stand will kill you if you get infected. How'd you figure that out? Bucciolati helped. Infected just a bit of flesh on my side and it began to melt. Quickly cut the flesh away, saved the rest of me. Bruno Bucciolati, the one who died. They say he was very good. Giorno trusted him completely. You were wasted on him. The story, as she'd heard it, was a little different, but... Yeah, Fugo said, having no argument with it. Your power only works at about 5 meters, Sheila-E continued. But if it can infect you, then you need to keep at least a meter away from it. You need to get in close, but can't get too close. Tough stand to use. I can understand why you prefer to be out in the open, but enemies won't be so accommodating. I know. Sheila-E didn't seem to hear him. She frowned and lowered her voice. So, this guy they've sent to help, Morello, you ever heard of him? No, the name doesn't ring a bell. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I find it hard to trust him. We better be careful. What do you mean? You'll know when you see him, she said, scowling. At the far end of the floor was a door. As they approached, a grumpy voice from inside called out. Stop! Don't knock! The vibration's driving batty. I know you're there, so just don't knock. The words tumbled out of him. Fugo glanced at Sheila-E, but she just scowled and said nothing. He shrugged and tried to go in without knocking, but the door was locked and didn't open. Do you mind unlocking it? He asked politely. This'll never do. The voice sounded even grumpier. What? What you just said. Which is it? Which is what? Were you polite because you know deep down you can never match Mr. Morello and wish to show your respect? Or were you just making a nominal show of politeness to someone who you have no real opinion of? Be clear. Fugo turned and looked at Shilai again. Her lower lip jutted out, but she said nothing. Fugo said, if you're the man Mr. sent, then I believe he said where to follow your instructions. That seemed safe enough. There was a long silence, but at last he heard the sound of the lock turning. He waited for the door to open, but this did not happen, and eventually he reached out and opened it himself. The room was much larger than Fugo's, but it was a cheap hotel, so not remarkably large. A man sat on a chair in the center of it. An old-fashioned man. He looked like he'd stepped out of a 1930s mob movie, wearing clothes designed to advertise his position in the mob. He wore a Borsalino hat, even though he was indoors. There was a scarf around his shoulders. The overall impression was that he was trying so hard to look slick, it wound up being oddly comical. Fugo tried not to let it show, but this man reminded him of the first person Polpo had ordered him to kill with purple haze. His target had been a made man in another syndicate, responsible for selling drugs in town. He dressed to the nines, but begged for his life, selling out his own people. This man had the same smell to him. So, the man said, looking Fugo over. You're the one with the extremely dangerous scan, Panna Cotta Fugo. Yes, I am. Well, you look pretty weak. A green kid. All book smarts, no street smarts. I thought you'd be a hardened killer. Ah, well, my name's Canolo Marolo. I'm a proper Passione member. I run the information analysis team. You don't run it. You're the only member. Sheila E. snapped. Marolo glared at her. Shut up, Sheila E. I know you were the go-between for the boss's bodyguards and those traitors on the assassin team. They don't trust you, so they sent you on this mission to clear your name. Sheila E. didn't bat an eye. You got the same deal, Marolo. Mista told me. You gave information to Risotto after he turned traitor. Marolo went white as a sheet, then turned bright red. He jumped to his feet, nearly knocking his chair over. No, don't be ridiculous. I just didn't know he turned traitor. And it's not like I gave him any critical information. I just reconstructed a burned photograph they brought in. There was nothing in the photo but a picture of Santa Lucia Station in Venice. The one with the lion statues. There are pictures of it everywhere. Who cares? It couldn't have meant anything. I don't know. Mista made it sound like you screwed them pretty bad. Ah, stop making stuff up. You didn't feed him any lies about me, did you? I simply told him the truth. By whose definition? The two of them seemed ready to start throwing punches. Annoyed, Fugo interrupted. If you don't mind, I'd like to talk about the job. Clearly they've lit a fire under all our asses, so I don't think this is the time for petty squabbles. Marolo clamped his mouth shut, looking sulky, and sat down on his chair. Sheila E. remained impassive but snorted defiantly. Marolo coughed, composing himself, then began laying documents out on the table. One of the photographs made Fugo frown.
Here it comes.
He recognized the person in it. Is he? You know him? That's suspicious. He was part of Passione. I'm asking the questions here. How do you know this man? Massimo Volpe was top secret. Nobody knew about him. Secret? Fugo couldn't hide his confusion. What was going on? He knew the man, but before he threw himself into this blood-stench underworld. Volpe's an old friend of mine, he said. Marolo and Sheila E. both gave him looks of deep suspicion. What are you talking about? He's 10 years older than you. I was in college when I was 13, Università di Bologna. Volpe was in the same class as me. Fugo picked up the picture and looked closer at it. The same dark rings under his eyes, the eyes like clouded glass. He barely changed at all. Chapter 4. Sailor's Love, Part 2. Passione, in its early days, had gained the trust of the people by fighting against the abuses of older organizations. This was all for show. The founder, Diavolo, simply saw it as an effective way to broaden his power quickly. Once he had an area under his thumb, the drug trade he had claimed to be fighting would be an open market for his own drugs. But dealing drugs requires connections in the countries where the raw materials are grown, and importing it is no easy matter. There were too many hurdles for an upstart crime syndicate to clear. But just as a young black man named Frank Lucas had used the Vietnam War to smuggle heroin into America using military transport free of customs inspections, forming direct connections to jungle farms through enlisted soldiers, Pashone's drug trade was launched to great success thanks to a special trick all their own. The trick's name was manic depression. Massimo Volpe's stand. The simplest way to put it is that his stand lets him create narcotics. Marolo explained. He was briefing Fugo and Sheila E. on what little he'd been told. Even Giorno didn't know he existed. But after Bucciolati killed Diavolo, everything he'd been hiding started surfacing, including the true nature of his narcotics business. Ask any other syndicate, and they'll look baffled. Tell you they have no clue how he's importing the drugs. They'll tell you the stuff just shows up on the street like magic. 'Cause it is. Volpe's using his stand to turn salt water, or rock salt, into drugs. I heard rumors that Pashone's drugs weren't the same as everyone else's, that they were fresh and expired quickly. That rumor would be true. Once a stand's effect expires, the drugs turn back into ordinary salt, and that time limit was perfect for keeping the business under control. If someone tried to stock up on it, or water it down, it was obvious. Part of the reason Diavolo got so much power so quickly was that he had a knack for finding out who was going to betray him and take action against them. At least, until Giorno found out. Risotto's team tried to take Diavolo out, assuming they'd be able to take over his import route and monopolize his business. Those idiots had no idea what was really going on. There was no route. Even if they'd won, they'd have had nothing to show for it. They were total scumbags. Good riddance. Sheila E. snarled. Fugo raised an eyebrow. She sounded a little too heated. Marolo picked up on it as well. What, you have something against them? He asked. For a second, Sheila E.'s eyes went frosty. I joined Pashone to kill someone on that team. Took a long time for me to track him down, but I knew he was part of that team. A man named Illuso. Less a man than a filthy scumbag demon piece of shit from hell. Illuso? What'd he ever do to you? Marolo grinned. He killed my sister, Sheila E. hissed. Marolo's grin faded. Sheila E. gave him a nasty smile. My only living relative. Clara raised me after my parents died. After he killed her, I came looking for him, ready to die to get to him. But he died before I could. It was all for nothing. But, you know what Giorno said to me? He said these words. Illuso died in the worst way imaginable. He suffered more than you can imagine. We watched it happen. I don't know if this will help at all, but in the 30 seconds it took him to die, he regretted every decision he'd made in life, including killing your sister. It felt like the sun had come out from behind a cloud and shone down on me. All those years I'd spent on my quest for revenge, telling myself that if I killed him,
dead like 16 times over.
Rest in peace, but secretly wondering if it was all actually for me, if it was just a selfish little vendetta. That thought preyed upon me, but Illuso paid for killing Clara. Justice won. And I owe Giorno everything. I would do anything to pay him back for that. I no longer need worry about anything. There was a light in her eyes, like she was bewitched. It was less like she was grateful, and more like the spirit of her dead sister had possessed her. Wait, Marolo said, scowling. So you joined us for revenge? That's why you worked as a messenger for the assassin team. Then, you basically joined us to betray us. You think we could trust you after you tell us something like that? I fully intended to get the boss's permission before killing Illuso. I don't consider that a betrayal. But you'd never spoken to Giorno at the time. You didn't even know Diavolo wasn't the boss. Well, this is bad. You're a liability. Like a horse with blinders, can't see the big picture. We can't afford that against these guys. Sheila E. looked sullen. I'm more useful than you, she muttered. Marolo ignored this and just stared at her suspiciously. Throughout all this, Fugo said not a word. He had no idea what to say. Diavolo had ordered him and his friends to fight the assassin team. Fugo himself had fought Illuso alongside Abbacchio and Giorno. If I said as much, she wouldn't believe it. And Giorno and Abbacchio did most of the work. I just finished him off. I don't know how good I really was. He was already powerless. He didn't need yyyy to point that out. So, do we know where Volpe is? He asked, trying to change the subject. Marolo glared at him. This'll never do, he said. It simply won't do. You simply aren't showing me the respect I deserve. Mister told me to do what I could. Orders from on high made it clear I was in charge, so maybe I should just let it pass, but it irks me. I think I'd better teach you a lesson. Marolo pulled something out of the inside pocket of his suit. It was a deck of cards. No box, just the cards. He began shuffling, expertly, cutting the cards like a magician. He put them on his shoulder and slid them down to his hand, then spread them out on the table and flipped them all back to front in a single motion. What are you doing? Fugo asked. Marolo ignored him and continued shuffling. At length, he took off his hat and shot the cards into it. Then he flipped it over onto the table, the cards still inside. Marolo began imitating a drum roll with his mouth, beckoning
How come it never seems like whenever I play against anyone else?
Stared at him blankly. Applaud, he whispered. If you don't applaud, they won't respond. Awkwardly, Fugo clapped his hands. Yyyy did not. Marolo scowled at her, but let it pass. He began making the drum roll sound again, and slowly raised his hat. The cards were underneath, but like magic, they had arranged themselves into a tower. A tower 7 times taller than his hat. Marolo put the hat back on his head, and the tower began moving with a life of its own. Each card sprouted tiny legs and arms and began spinning. We are the Watchtower Troop! The cards chanted like a scene from a children's cartoon. All along the Watchtower. This was Canolo Marolo's stand. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. There are 53 of us here to entertain you. I am the Joker, and I'll be your host for this evening.
Oh!
Hi, Joker. You always did like to joke around. These are the spades. If they get there to interrupt, there's nothing they can't do. As stubborn as they are deadly. Oh, spades, whatever that symbol is supposed to be. And those are the hearts. Their hearts inspire envy,
returns to
and
the
their
hand
envy
again.
Inspires faith.
But hey, this is an important piece of
Actually, kind of
removal.
gross if you think about it. And these would be the clubs. They look like clovers and trust in their luck, which is only 50-50.
It does suck that it's a spell, but
you all have 3 leaves, yet 4-leaf clovers are so very common. And last but not least, the diamonds. They're sure that money makes the world go round, and that they are the most valuable. Diamonds, rhinestones are all you need to impress. The cards sang and danced through this whole routine. What the? Fugo whispered. Shut up and watch, Marolo hissed. The cards continued their number. Today you were after Vladimir Kokaki and his narcotics team. Where, oh, where could they
Nutty,
be?
even.
Kokaki, keep that old fart away from me.
Yeah.
He was a gangster long before Pacione, a quiet man until you cross him. Then he'll kill you and everyone you know. He helped Diavolo out, but when he died, he and his team went into hiding. All 3 of them are every bit as insane. Volpe, Vittorio, Angelica. Each and every one of them addicted to their own drugs. So, they know no pain. You can hit them, it won't work. Oh crap. These guys are bad news. The baddest news. So, it's a kind of fortune-telling, yyyy said, pointing at the cards. I've heard of stands that can see things that are far away. In your case, these cards work like a kind of Ouija board, telling you what you need to know. Nothing so unreliable. My cards tell the truth. Nothing more. Really? They aren't exactly being very specific. Yyyy frowned. The show, meanwhile, was going off the rails. Crazy people, I'm just dumb. Not as dumb as you are. Shut up, 7 of diamonds. Get back in the middle of the deck where you belong. What? You're only the 6 of spades. I'm 1 higher than you. At least I am not as crap as you. Who are you calling crap? Stop fighting, you're both idiots. You've got a lot of nerve. Who do you think you are? I never did like you, putting on airs like I shouldn't wonder. You're the one who interrupted when I was about to say my line. I can't believe you guys are arguing about this. Mind your own business. You want some? Now they were fighting, punching each other's numbers, knocking each other out. If all a card's numbers were hits, the card would go blank and fall over. The kings and queens were strangling each other, while the jacks hovered anxiously, eventually mobbed by the numbers. Card after card fell off the tower, fluttering down to the table. Soon the whole thing came crashing down in a heap. The four of hearts staggered upright on top of the pile, whispered, "Tower Mina!" and fell over. Rollo applauded. Then he gestured for the others to follow suit. Fugo reluctantly did. Sheila-E did not. Without standing up, the card slid along the table and into Morolo's suit pocket. The show was over. What the shit? Sheila-E said. Our stands reflect our own minds. Very obviously in your case, so obsessed with pointless hierarchy, the actual fortune-telling was half-assed. It's not half-assed. He said where they were. We know where Kokaki is hiding. Morolo puffed up his chest. Fugo put his chin on his hand, pondering this. Taormina's in Sicily, he said. That could pose a problem. Sicily usually did. Stand named Manic Depression. Owner Massimo Volpe, 25. Destruction C. Speed A. Range E. Duration B. Drugs last 2 weeks. Control B. Potential C. Power. Extreme acceleration of life energy. If used to alter salt, then melted and injected into the blood, provokes a powerful narcotic reaction in the brain, as effective or more effective than existing illegal drugs. This alteration remains temporarily when removed from the stand. If the stand's thorns pierce someone directly, their flesh reacts.
There's nothing worth uploading there. It's the game I played with Journal, right? Why is it the exact same thumbnail? Okay, why is Tekken so efficient? Do you know you can buy your mom in Steam for 50 pesos?
Huh? Your mom? What do you mean?
I refuse to elaborate. Did I accidentally upload the same video twice? From there. Alright, here I go. I cooked the coconut.
Oh yeah, we can.
Oh man, this was peak gameplay. I misspelled peak. Oh, don't tell me this was the video I did with Kuya Coco.
Suffer the wrath of Eastly!
Oh, it's Genshin.
Their heart may burst, their organs may melt. The effects are many, making the stand unpredictable. Fugo. Sitting in the dark, Massimo Volpe couldn't help but ask again. Panna cotta, Fugo. Mario Zucchero was draped on the chair in front of him like a wet shirt hung there to dry. Flattened out like this, he could barely produce any audible sounds at all, and none that he did formed recognizable words. Fortunately, Massimo had experience picking up on subtle movements in the flesh, and could understand what Zucchero said based solely on the way his lips fluttered. Enough about the time he fought Bruciolati's team. The point is, a man named Fugo was part of his team. Zucchero whimpered something. About the same age, though. I can't say I'd spared a single thought to him since he was expelled, but I can see him ending up in the mob. A faint whine. You saw Narancia and Fugo's stands as the two greatest threats, so went after them first. That boy Narancia's already dead, Kokaki said. Giorno Giovanna made a generous donation in his name to a church in Naples. Same church where they held his funeral. But I've heard nothing like that for Fugo. So I guess that means he really is a... So what? You guys were friends? Angelica asked. He didn't have any friends. Massimo laughed. He was conceited, stuck up, full of himself, and had a terrible temper. Vittorio said. Worse than mine? Almost. I can't believe someone like him would ever be part of a team. Bruciolati moved up by earning Popo's favor, Kokaki explained. And one reason for that was that he had a man who could kill a lot of enemies very quickly. According to some pretty plausible rumors, anyway. People were afraid to go after him, and he took advantage of that. And that was Fugo. I could see that. He seemed like the type, somehow. Pretending like he was studious, but hiding what he really thought. What's it like to fight a friend? Angelica asked. Like I said, he didn't have any. Angelica came wafting over to him and draped her arms around him. Oh, Massimo, why are you always frowning? Are you hungry? I'm not frowning. I've been wondering about something for a long time. I think you'd be cute if you smiled. Can you try? For me? I'm smiling. See? No, I mean a real smile. She grabbed the corners of his phony grin and tried to pull them higher. No good, she muttered. A stream of blood escaped her mouth. Massimo wiped it away in silence. He called out manic depression and had it stroke her back. Angelica Atanasio had been born with a horrible blood disease. It made it feel like tiny needles were flowing through her veins. No medicine, no stand could make her feel healthy. Only Massimo Volpe had been able to free her from that pain to slow the progression of her sickness. Kokaki and Vittorio watched the two of them in silence. At last, Kokaki turned to Zucchero. If these fools could find us, we should assume a more powerful team is on the way. We may not be able to slip away. Then let's take a fight to them. I'll protect everyone, Vittorio proclaimed, waving his dagger. No, Kokaki said, his tone all business. You stay with Angelica and Massimo. I'll go. If Fugo's specialty is indiscriminate massacres, then I'm the best choice for the job. Chapter 5. Tempting Lips, Part 1. Travelers in Italy must be prepared to encounter strikes, or sciopero, as the locals call them. A national strike will stop all transportation, close museums, and leave sightseers unable to see many sights at all. Workers in the ports around the Strait of Messina happened to be on sciopero that day, shutting down all the ferries and turning the bustling port into a ghost town. Is this sciopero our doing? Fugo asked. Murolo just grinned at him but would not answer. Passione may well have ordered it. There was usually some sort of underworld influence behind most strikes. The sight of made men standing between striking laborers, hashing out the details of illegal business deals, was an everyday sight in Italy. Okay, the warehouse where they found bloodstains is this way, Sheila E. said, taking the lead. The others followed. The door of the warehouse had a no trespassing sign hung on it. Sheila E. gave it a tug, and when it proved locked, she produced her stand. Voodoo child, she whispered, and the door exploded inwards, a powerful blow ordinary eyes could never have seen. I had the key, Morello said, but Sheila E. ignored him. She stepped inside, her stand following after. Voodoo Child was a short-range power type, and the spike-covered shadow never moved far from her side. When Sheila E. reached the darkened stain on the floor, Voodoo Child began punching the floor around it with iron-like fists. It pounded the floor like a child during a tantrum. The concrete floor began to break, countless cracks running across it. A moment later, those cracks began to change, each of them morphing into a pair of lips. They pursed themselves, then began speaking, all at once. That's another good old lost count. I've got to blame for my school scientists so much. The kids started in the room. There was no connection, no context, no sense that these were a conversation. Just, oh, Fugo thought. These are all things people who've worked in this warehouse said. Things they didn't want anyone else to hear. Thoughts and feelings that seeped into the ground, their guilt and self-loathing trapping them here, haunting the place until Sheila E.'s stand pulled them to the surface. She'd said she was looking for the man who killed her sister. This search was reflected in her stand's power. It allowed her to hunt for clues, uncover sins, and get revenge, as focused and clear a personality as there was. So unlike my own. Fugo broke off that train of thought. It wasn't leading anywhere good. He preferred not to dwell on what Purple Haze's killer virus said about his own state of mind. Sheila E. dismissed meaningless voice after meaningless voice until only one remained. I obey you. Obey you. Obey you. That's him, Fugo said. That's Volpe's voice. So they did fight here, Morello nodded. We aren't the first sent after them. The last group got taken out here. The bodies will be sleeping with the fishes by now. But what does it mean? Sheila E. asked. Does Volpe feel guilty about following Kokaki's lead? I don't get it. If he wanted to be in charge and was hiding that, Voodoo Child would have said so. She looked at Fugo. I don't know, he said. It's not like I knew him well. Morello waved a hand dismissively. It's not like we need to profile him. What's important is that this proves my watchtower's prophecy was right. They left this harbor, crossed the strait, and headed to Taormina. He puffed out his chest with pride. Sheila E. gave him a look, and then sighed. I guess you're right. We came here to be sure, and now we are. Let's go. They headed for the yacht waiting in the harbor. The only way to Sicily during a strike was to use a privately owned vessel. When he saw the yacht provided for them, Fugo gulped. It was the same model as the lagoon Bucciolati had owned. He remembered the first time he'd seen the lagoon. Damn, that's so sweet! This is really Bucciolati's! Naranjo was straight up dancing with excitement. He was 17, but his eyes shone like a 6-year-old. That's what he said, Fugo answered. He was sure Bucciolati had invited them to the yacht for some secret mission, and was too tense to enjoy any of it. But the idea had clearly never entered Naranjo's head.
I've never seen this before.
He was able to
There's no way this is a real card I'm reading right now.
Expedition. Fugo shook his head. What do you think, Abbacchio? Abbacchio had said nothing for some time, and said nothing in response. He'd been a cop
What do you know? It's
and his
Diva.
silence carried weight.
Format
Fugo had
available.
grown used to it, but he'd seen Abbacchio make children cry with silence alone, then glare at them without a shred of guilt. He was that kind of man. I wonder if this is it, Fugo said. I don't know what this Giorno is capable of, but if we're bringing
They're
someone
gonna
new on
disable
board,
my
must be time.
actions.
I'm sure they're making Bucciolati capo, Fugo said excitedly. He's got the results. He's got the support. He should have been promoted by now, but... Don't speculate, Abbacchio hissed. It's a weakness of yours, Fugo. You think too much. You think on things best left unthought. Fugo bit his tongue. Our role is to do as Bucciolati tells us. Put our faith in him. That's all, am I wrong? Trust him. But not this new guy. Be on your guard with him. But Bucciolati brought him in. Trust Bucciolati, but not the man he trusts. Isn't that contradictory? They're different, and you know it. Narancia came running back to them. Let's take a picture! Everyone line up in front of the boat. Fugo couldn't help but smile. Good idea, Mister said behind them. Bucciolati, you too. You guy, you take the picture. He tossed Giorno a camera and stood in front of the yacht. Bucciolati shook his head, but followed suit. Okay, everyone, look this way, Giorno said, like he'd done this 100 times before. He lined up the shot with the 5 of them and the lagoon behind them, and snapped the photo. The clear blue sky behind them. But the sky today was grey and cloudy. I wonder what happened to that photo. He had forgotten about it completely. They'd taken the yachts to Marina Grande on Capri. Bucciolati had been made capo, but in return was charged with guarding the boss's daughter, who was being targeted by the assassin team. None of them had a chance to get the film developed. It might be in the camera still. It could be anywhere. By the time Fugo dragged himself from his reverie, land was in sight, and Morello was guiding them closer to the shore. Sicily. The island had been conquered by Phoenicians, Greeks, Arabs, Normans, and more, but to this day the inhabitants called themselves Sicilians, not Italians. But the culture had assimilated so many influences, it was no longer possible to tell what was uniquely Sicilian. More than one church bore trademarks of both Arabic styles and Norse. As a trade center in the middle of the sea, it had been a part of all history. One of the greatest Greek philosophers, Archimedes, made Sicily his home, choosing it as the place to pass on his knowledge before being struck down at the hands of invaders. The place bred darkness and light in equal measures. The great human spectacle, comedy and tragedy in equal measure, wrote the author Giuseppe Fava before being assassinated by the mafia he campaigned against. When Allied forces landed here during the Second World War, the Axis defeat became a certainty, and history would never be the same. It was that sort of place. Fugo stood, staring at the cliffs as they drew near. "Earth to Fugo," Sheila E. said from right behind him. Fugo jumped. Hi, he said awkwardly. "Please tell me you weren't getting cold feet just because you and Volpe used to hang out." "No, nothing like that. He is the root of all evil. He can't be allowed to live." Yeah, drugs are bad. "You don't get it," Sheila E. said. "I know what you're thinking. If they want to do drugs, let them. Their choice. If they want to die, who cares how they do it? Right? That's a mistake. It isn't the flesh drugs devour. It's the soul. Human bodies naturally produce narcotics in response to suffering, to help us overcome it. But if we give ourselves to narcotics, it doesn't do anything to the cause of said suffering. Instead, it multiplies it. But the person taking the drugs is less and less aware of it. The suffering spreads to their families, to innocents around them, taking advantage of their weakness. Those who sell drugs are insulting the world and everyone in it, insulting humanity, dignity, the future, insulting life itself. They deserve what's coming to them." Sheila E. spoke as if reading a script, like she'd memorized a speech someone else had told her and was repeating it verbatim. Someone whose words she trusted implicitly. Giorno Giovanna. She followed him blindly. If he told her to die, she would not hesitate. She would let Fugo's virus take her life. That's why she'd been sent to meet him. Fugo had seen people trust others this way before, trust them more than they did themselves. He recognized the desperation that lay behind it.
Oh, right, I
He
forgot.
remembered what that
Oh my
boy
god, I'm
had
so
said.
dumb.
"Bucciolati, what should I do? Should I come? I'm scared. But if you order me to, if you say come with me, then I'll find the courage
right,
to go.
no spells as well.
I'm not scared of anything you tell me to do."
I
Sheila
completely
E's eyes
forgot
were
I
the
didn't
same
have
as the
access
ranch's
to
had
level
been.
8.
Narancia. He hadn't always been that way.
Big mistake,
His
I
faith in
suppose.
Bucciolati was not earned overnight.
Probably game
Narancia
ending.
had led his own life before Bucciolati, had suffered his own way, had picked his own battles. Fugo knew this better than anyone. After all, I was the one who introduced Narancia to Bucciolati. Fugo had been summoned to Bucciolati's favorite restaurant to discuss a job. He was running late and in a hurry when he saw the boy. The boy was rummaging through the garbage bins out back, eating vegetable scraps and picking the meat off used soup bones. He looked like any other homeless kid. The economy was a mess, and there were people like him on every corner. Normally, Fugo would have passed him without a second glance. So why did he stop and look? Because when the boy saw Fugo staring at him, he didn't look guilty, ashamed, or even angry. There was an air of resignation to him, as if he'd long ago learned that nothing said to him and nothing he could say would change anything. Fugo would later learn that the infection in the boy's eyes had grown so bad he'd been told he would die from it. But what Fugo sensed in that moment was not that kind of resignation, nothing that intense. It was a very casual resignation, too casual for Fugo to pity him or view him with contempt. The boy's name was Narancha Girga. Their eyes met, and a second later, for reasons he himself did not understand, Fugo walked over to the boy, took his arm, and dragged him to the restaurant. The boy didn't fight it, just let himself be led. Fugo did not stop to see how he would react. The moment he set foot inside the restaurant, he called out to Bucciolati, "I want to feed him some spaghetti. You don't mind, right?" The restaurant owner looked surprised, but Bucciolati didn't bat an eye. He motioned the two of them over and pushed his own plate over to Narancha without even looking in Fugo's direction. Fugo had known he would do this. Bucciolati had a soft spot for kids, especially ones in trouble. Fugo later wondered if he'd only brought Narancha along to cover his own lateness.
Oh no, wait, I could have put that on
because
field.
he was so unsure of the real reason. When Bucciolati noticed Narancha's illness, he called a taxi and took him directly to the hospital. Fugo was left alone in the restaurant. He found himself with no appetite, pushing the food listlessly around his plate. Narancha's gaze haunted him. He felt as if he'd seen it somewhere before.
Nice.
He felt like he knew that emptiness in the boy's eyes. "I hate to say it, Mr. Fugo," the restaurant owner said. This was Bucciolati's territory, and it was part of Fugo's job to protect the businesses in it. "But you cannot just give handouts to kids like that. If word spread, we could have a mob of them gathering outside." He said it as delicately as possible. "Don't worry," Fugo said curtly. "He doesn't have any friends." Why was he so certain? He wasn't sure, but he knew for a fact he was right. "Even so, I hear you. I won't do it again, and I'll make sure Bucciolati gets the message." The owner sighed. That's right. Everyone looks up to you. Ratchet, was it? What do you want? I really need a favor. I'm grateful for all you did, of course, and I want to make it up to you. Can I join your gang? What did Bucciolati say? Fugo knew exactly what he'd said. Narancha stared at his feet, sullen. "Go home, kid. Go to school. Then do that."
Calm Before the Gong is such a trap, man.
Narancha spluttered.
People think you can use it to cheat out damage easily, but
yet somehow Fugo felt he knew exactly what the boy was trying to say.
Never that
"You
simple.
can't trust your parents, and the school teaches you nothing but
You
lies."
only have two pieces,
Narancha looked surprised.
and only one can be a dream team.
How'd you know?
And Calm Before the Gong is one of the worst.
World is. Give me a break, man.
That is, unless you're playing an Unga Bunga deck.
You feel it, like, in your chest, like, right here. Everything just feels at peace. You feel strong enough to face anything. The way he got all mad at a dirty kid like me, genuinely angry at me. My parents, those teachers, they only got mad because it was their job to scold me, but he... There were tears in Narancha's eyes, but they couldn't dull the pain. That resignation was gone.
Bingo with the
hopelessness
nipples
in his
and everything.
eyes as he
Vulnerable.
looked from
No,
superstar.
really?
Bucciolati
Now you're
had
dead.
given
Fuck.
him a future.
Now you're dead.
Given him a kingdom. Itched to
Dude,
live.
you never even
At
managed to
last,
damage me
Fugo
on my new
understood
stuff,
why
so
he
you were...
helped Narancia that day. It's just like I used to be. Like I was, alone in the police station before Bucciolati saved me.
Oh my god.
Certain there
Let me
was
do
no
my other
hope coming.
side
He'd
side
given up on
please.
everything. When he
I'm
saw that,
just
Fugo
kidding.
had reached out.
What
But
does
he was
this
different.
do?
His eyes were nothing like Fugo's. Nothing like the old Fugo. Nothing like the new. The light in his eyes was something else entirely. Please, man, I promise I won't tell Bucciolati. He was practically begging, clutching Fugo's sleeve. If Fugo turned him down, he wouldn't give up. But if he went around asking to join Passione, it could get him killed. Fugo took a deep breath and sighed. Turn around, Narancia, he said quietly. No? Why? Just do it. Confused, Narancia turned his head. He frowned, then yelped. What the hell is that? Like a ghost, or I can see through it. Fugo nodded. If you can see purple haze, you've got the potential. Huh? What? You should be able to pass Pulpo's test with no problem. It won't get you killed. Fugo dismissed purple haze. Narancia stared at him. Is that a yes, then? You'll let me join? I'll make the introductions. After that, it's up to you. When you meet the capo, try not to act like an idiot. Narancia scowled. I'm not an idiot. Saying that is a great way to look like you are, kid. Why you gotta talk down to me like that? Like what? Calling me kid? You know I'm older than you, right? So? I've been a maid man for over a year. Yeah, but... Narancia didn't look happy about it. Fugo knew why. He didn't want to be beholden to anyone but Bucciolati. He didn't care about Passione's hierarchy. Okay, I promise not to call you kid. Are you making fun of me? You can call me Fugo. We're even. Sure I can't talk you into calling me sir? Hell no, I'm not calling an idiot sir. Besides, Bucciolati doesn't even let us call him that. Oh, wait, did you just call me an idiot? Bucciolati hates idiots. Oh no. Back then, Fugo and Narancia were on even ground. Bucciolati had saved them both. They were both working to pay him back. There was little difference between them. But now, Narancia was dead, and Fugo had to kill the narcotics king to prove he wasn't a traitor. Which of them was superior? Narancia had been convinced age was most important. What would he think of it? It didn't matter. Narancia was no more. Fugo would have to find the answer for himself. What did those words mean, Narancia? What you said on San Giorgio Maggiore? The last thing I ever heard you say. Lost in thought, Fugo scarcely noticed the shores of Sicily approaching. It's starting to rain, Sheila-E said, gazing up at the sky, raindrops splattering on her cheeks. Chapter 6. Tempting Lips, Part 2. Marolo had decided that they were better off avoiding the ports, so they anchored off the rocky coast and made landfall in a lifeboat. The coast of the island was lined with rocky cliffs that made landing impossible, but they used the power of their stands to ascend the sheer cliff face. That is, Fugo and Sheila-E used Purple Haze and Voodoo Child to carry them and Marolo, whose stand was not really suited to feats of strength. Fugo had to be very careful not to release his virus. Will the yacht be okay? There's a security system on board. Anyone tries to board it, we'll know. If the cameras see Volpe or the others, the ship's ready to explode. What if innocent bystanders boarded with them? Details, schmeetails, sucks to be them. Sheila-E stared down at the yacht a moment, then had Voodoo Child pick up a boulder and fling it at the yacht. It hit the yacht at such high speed, it went all the way through and the ship sank. Jesus, Marolo said. Sheila-E ignored him. Let's go, she said, and walked away. The others followed. No paths led near the cliff, and they were forced to pick their way across perilous slopes. This
An interesting
mist-like
build.
rain showed
Lava
no
Reef.
signs of turning into a full-on downpour, yet
Still
seemed
pretty
equally
standard, all
unwilling
things
to
considered,
stop.
but
He looked up, but couldn't
Liberation
see a single
Division.
crack in the wall of clouds overhead. The weather was often unpleasant on the coast this time of year, but It helped us land undetected, but somehow it just feels too easy. After all, the narcotics team had managed to slip through Giorno's network and escape to Sicily. Who knew what they were capable of? Fugo shivered. Every time he thought about Giorno, a chill ran down his spine. He hadn't worked with Giorno for very long, but when he thought back, he couldn't think of a single thing the blonde boy had said that was wrong. Every move he made was right, every action a step towards the larger goals to come. Every time Fugo had been convinced there was nothing to be done, Giorno had fixed things effortlessly. Why did Giorno send me after the narcotics team? That boy did nothing without purpose. There must be some clear reason behind this plan. He simply couldn't see Giorno throwing suspected traitors after actual traitors in the hopes of clearing the deck. He must have a reason, some hidden, ulterior motive. At this point, he realized yyyy was staring at him. What? He asked. yyyy kept her eyes on him, never once glancing forward, yet never stumbled. One wrong step on this rocky ground and you'd fall, but she never put a foot wrong. It was like watching a mountain cat or a ninja. You were thinking about Giorno, right? She said. Fugo gulped. Nothing bad, he said. I was just wondering if he really intends for this strategy to succeed. When you first met Giorno, what did you think? Think? Feel. Fugo hesitated. yyy's eyes seemed to see right through him. They'd catch him if he lied. He told the truth. We didn't know who he really was, so we didn't size him up exactly. I thought the way he presented himself could have been mistaken for weakness, but it seemed like he had the potential to be much more. That's what I thought at the time, anyway. We all thought he was a new recruit Bucciolazzi had found. yyyy seemed dubious. At length, she said, Giorno said this to me. You take me for an honest man because you yourself are honest. I asked Mr. the same question. He said he thought Giorno was lucky, someone who'd bring luck to the team. You see what I mean? Mr.'s the lucky one, isn't he? When people look at Giorno, they see something so unfathomable, they see themselves reflected in him. They're swallowed up in his potential and wind up seeing only themselves. She had no way of knowing, but a boy named Koichi Hirose had once described Giorno as a gentle soul. A strange thing to say, considering he stole my luggage. Koichi himself was a gentle soul, one who inspired devotion in the unlikeliest of friends. Fugo was at a loss for words. By that logic, the one with untapped potential is you, yyyy said skeptically. At the very least, you believe as much, deep down. But I look at your stand, at the deadly virus purple haze spreads, and I see finality, the end of the line. Where is the potential there? Fugo had no answer. I really don't know, he said. Stop squabbling, you two, Barola called out. He was struggling to keep up with them. Mr. and Giorno are our superiors. We're not fit to talk about them like that. Disrespectful. yyyy didn't look back. Instead, she started sniffing the air. That smell. What? It smells like vomit, but if the stomach acid is this heavy, rotting but not fermenting, it must be. She muttered, then started flat out running, feet dancing across the points of the rocks. Hey, Fugo yelled. You wait for me in town. I've got to check on something, she yelled without breaking stride. A moment later, she was out of sight. Check on what? I don't know. Barolo and Fugo stared after her, confused. Roads in Sicilian cliffside towns are generally quite narrow. Where the hills are steep, people take what land can be built upon and make the most efficient use of it, clustering homes together. Many roads are too small for cars, so small people can barely pass each other without rubbing shoulders. Likewise, yards are an unheard of luxury, and the walls of the buildings face directly onto the road. If you look towards the sea, you have a glorious view, but in all other directions, things get claustrophobic. The contrast proves a source of great interest to tourists, but for the locals, Well, you'd have to live there to know. Sheila E. found herself on a narrow street like this. The aging population had left this area without residents, the homes abandoned as the council tried to decide whether to flatten them or preserve them for their historical value. The pavement was wet from the rain. She crouched down, staring at a stain. She leaned in and sniffed. She did not touch. She kept her eyes open, on her guard, mindful of her surroundings, no closer to it than she needed to be. She checked it again, and then nodded. A man drank often, but did not habitually do drugs. Not a member of the team, then. Her sense of smell was good enough that she could tell whoever's puke this was had thrown up under the influence of manic depression. This was not a talent given by her stand, but something she had been born with. A sense she had honed as a child, running around the woods with her pet dog. That dog had been her best friend, until the day some local thugs had beaten him to death, laughing all the while. The anger she felt then had never left her. It was one of the main reasons she detested humanity, why she was quick to judge. Part of her remained convinced that right below the surface, everyone was like the bastards that had killed Toto. Her sister's murder had only cemented this state of mind. There was little chance of it changing again. But the reaction's too powerful, too raw. He didn't take this as a drug. As she muttered, something bizarre happened to the wall behind her. It moved. The flat, solid surface rippled like the surface of a pond. The ripple was moving towards her, down the wall, and along the ground towards her feet. Then something reached up from the gap between the paving stones. A hand, as thin as a piece of paper. The hand was holding a needle, the tip of it poised to poke Sheila E. in the back, but she was already gone. She jumped. Like a mounted goat, she kicked the ground, flung herself to the wall, caught it with the tips of her fingers, and hung there like a spider. The flattened hand realized it had failed, and withdrew. That was... Sheila E. had a good idea who her enemy was. Soft machine. The power to remove all thickness from things. You're supposed to be on our side, Mario Zucchero. As she spoke, her eyes darted this way and that, checking the cracks in the pavement, the chinks in the wall, every microscopic gap.
They didn't have a defense that could defend with the honor they had remaining.
Zucchero, you were sent after Volpe before us. Did you betray us, or did they fill you with drugs, turning you into their puppet? Sheila E. bounded away from the wall, moving into the open, up to a lightning rod on the roof of the building. From there, she had a good view of the town, of the narrow, twisting roads. I see. Soft Machine is helpless in the open, but Tower Mean is full of hiding places. The perfect hunting ground. Sheila E. sniffed the air, but the scent of vomit was too strong, completely covering the scent of Zucchero's body. The rain was covering his scent as well. And when it's raining, he can hide in the gap between the pavement and the water. Ideal weather for him. She was in trouble, yet her grin suggested otherwise. The grin was more of a sneer, really. You know who I am, Zucchero? She called. You work for a team in Rome, so you must have heard the name Sheila E. I'm the one who crushed the Milanse's gambling operation, letting Passione move in on their territory when I was only 10 years old. That's why I was promoted to the boss's personal guard. No reaction. She kept talking. The E stands for Erini, the Furious. The name is my vow to show no mercy to any enemy. Well, Zucchero, do you have the balls to take up arms against my name? No matter how much she baited him, Zucchero made no reply. There was a shimmer at the corner of the wall. Sheila E. sprang into action. Voodoo Child hurtled towards it, slamming its fist into
Weird
the wall,
how
but
little
it had been nothing but a spurt of
the characters
water.
talk
Nothing more.
during the
Even
fight,
so, on guard against the enemy,
even though it's a novel, and that would be the best way to fill pages. A clear sign it's not written by Araki, I suppose, for one,
But Zucchero was nowhere to be found.
but
Still,
also a little bit of
Liberace
irony, I think.
The vibrations
Okay,
reached
this is
Zucchero where he
unbearable.
hid, but unless she scored a direct hit, it didn't matter. All he could feel was heat, like he was burning up inside. The sensation forced him to remain flattened. He attacked anyone who approached. He'd been turned into a landmine. The instincts and techniques he mastered, crawling his way up from poverty to a position of some influence in the mob, had been reduced to reflexive responses. A robot following a program. No, less than that. He was little more than the sensor that tells a door to open. Mixed with the pounding was the sound of Sheila-E uttering, Zucchero, 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 chanting his name. She sounded mad, but Zucchero was beyond such nuance. He simply headed towards the voice, instinctively trying to get behind her. His body remembered the right distance to
What
strike.
the fuck?
Without conscious thought, he flew forward, Soft Machine's needle directly aiming for her back, but only piercing empty air. Zucchero's instincts failed him. Deprived of a clear goal, he fell into a panic.
Unpunished.
She was there, except she wasn't. He slid his flattened head out from the gap in the stones,
When did this
confirming
card come
his
out?
incomprehensible state of affairs with his own eyes. But what
I've
he
never
saw,
seen any other
lips,
Blue Deck play up
just
until now.
lips. The cracks she'd made in the pavement had formed a pair of lips. The lips were chanting his name. Voodoo Child's power was echoing Sheila-E's words. She'd made her speech not to wind him up or build herself up, but to set this trap. And a moment later, the trap snapped shut. The crack he was peering out of, and all the cracks around it, turned into a giant pair of lips. Snap! The lips parted and bit down. Zucchero's wafer-thin body strained against the teeth, like someone trying to tear open a
They weren't
plastic
punished
bag.
immediately,
He
but
couldn't
they were
move.
punished
The
eventually.
lips began sliding across
was
the
very
ground,
winnable.
stretching him, like a hunter skinning an animal to make a rug. I thought you'd stretch more than that, Sheila-E said, walking towards him. She'd planned all of this. The moment he'd vanished, she'd guessed he must be using sound to navigate, and used that to her advantage. She always planned to capture, not kill. He was a valuable clue. I thought you'd stretch like chewing gum, but I guess not. You're flat, but that's all. Zucchero's lips flapped, unable to speak clearly. Oh, you can't talk? Don't worry, I can read lips. Say whatever you need to say. What? Gotta what? Speak clearly. She grabbed his face with both hands and tugged on it, trying to get a better look. Zucchero's behavior didn't change at all. His lips just kept on repeating the same thing, as if he was whispering the same mantra to himself over and over. Sheila-E could just barely make it out. Gotta move. Gotta move. Gotta move. 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 Got to move. Or else what? Before she could ponder, his body crumpled, then tore. All the blood in his veins came gushing out, spraying in all directions. His bodily functions had been amped up so high, his flesh could no longer stand up to the force of his own blood pressure. Sheila-E leapt backwards, Zucchero's body inflated. In death, his soft machine no longer in effect. Every part of his body had been destroyed, his very bones turned to dust, so that his body looked less like a human than a rolled-up wet blanket. Jesus! Sheila-E grimaced. Zucchero had not just been turned into a puppet, he'd been killed. His enemy had been so much stronger than him that it had not even been worth it for them to keep him as a puppet. But that meant... Shit! Sheila-E turned on her heel and ran back the way she'd come. Zucchero was a decoy, buying time! A decoy to draw her away from Fugo and Marolo. The enemy had been waiting for them. Stand name, Voodoo Child. Owner, Sheila Capetito, 15. Destruction, V. Duration, E. Speed, A. Control, V. Range, E. Potential, B. Power. When it punches something, that thing grows lips, which repeat words spoken in secret nearby. Words the speaker knows will make others think less of them, have power, and stain the area around them. All humans are hiding something, and Voodoo Child can find out what. A close-range power type, it can also punch people, growing lips that blather that person's innermost secrets. This causes most to die of shock. Panacota Fugo's former teammate Leone Abbacchio had once explained his power thusly. It's feral. Attacks explode out of it, then it vanishes like a summer squall. He'd fought alongside Fugo a number of times. Each time, Abbacchio investigated the crime and Fugo executed the culprit. Sometimes they were covering up business scandals in the name of protection, or eliminating those who tried to embezzle from the mob, or executing the minimal number of Passione members required to contain internal conflicts. Nothing the police would be involved in, just problems that needed to be taken care of. The bulk of these requests came from Bucciolati, but some came from Polpo, and these they often kept secret from Bucciolati. Their capo needed the job done, but they knew, for example, that their team leader would not be able to stomach the murder of a child. If Fugo decided a particular job would prey on Bucciolati's conscience, he kept it secret. Abbacchio went along with this, never breathing a word. People around them seemed to view them as partners, but Fugo never once asked Abbacchio about his past, and Abbacchio never asked about his. Neither understood the other. If they had ever been in a situation where only one could survive, Fugo was certain Abbacchio would abandon him to his fate, and he felt sure he would do the same. They trusted each other, but they were not close. There was as little between them as the day they'd met. Abbacchio had been a policeman. When his corruption was discovered and he was on trial, Fugo went to see him in prison. He'd accepted bribes from one of Passione's thugs, and Fugo was looking for information. The thug had died in police custody, of hypothermia, in midsummer. In other words, he'd been dealt with by his superiors, and only Abbacchio knew anything more. The booze and the women had left him a shell of a man with deep, dark circles under his eyes. He fixed Fugo with a reptilian stare and said not a word. Be reasonable, Abbacchio. A man like you goes to prison, you'll wind up dead. Do you know what happens to ex-cops in there? The guards won't help you. They hate you more than anyone. What exactly were you paid to overlook? I hear you hesitated when you should have shot that suspect. Was this because he had something on you? Was it drugs? Was that man dealing drugs, and you let him be? The silent treatment's all I'm getting. Fugo frowned. He was beginning to suspect that the recent flood of narcotics on the market was coming from within Passione and wanted proof. We've demolished most of the other families, but there's more drugs than ever. It must be because our mystery boss is selling the very drugs he's forbidden. If that was the case, Bucciolati was quickly going to find himself between a rock and a hard place. Bucciolati had earned his reputation as an honorable gangster in part because the people knew his stance on drugs. If that were to prove a hollow lie, he'd be done for. What should I do? As he racked his brains, Abbacchio suddenly spoke. Why? He said. Huh? What makes a shallow kid like you look so serious? He growled, the furrows in his brow deepening. He looked for all the world like he was picking a fight, but that didn't quite fit. What? You and I aren't that different. We're both scumbags. So what makes you so sure of yourself? Abbacchio, I know you're like me. I know you're a failure. I can see the rot in your eyes. So where do you get this confidence? I feel like I should be insulted. Tell me why, and I'll tell you what I know. Tell you what, exactly? Your reason for living. Tell me what it is that keeps you going. I've merely sworn loyalty to my syndicate. Then tell me how to do the same, Abbacchio said. Fugo blinked at him. You want to join? If that's reason enough for you, it's worth trying. You're an ex-cop. They'll never promote you. They'll never give you territory of your own. You'll be someone's henchman your whole life. Are you ready for that? And that's if you don't get stabbed in the back. The family won't protect you. Not really. You're better off taking the money, moving abroad and living it up. Abbacchio just glared at him. The darkness in his eyes was terrifying. It was drugs that brought him and Abbacchio together. And now he was about to meet the source of those drugs, Massimo Volpe and his team, and fight to the death. Chapter 7. You who do not weep. On the east end of Taormina is an ancient theater dating to the 7th century BC, the Teatro Greco. built in the Greek style, with the stage
Not looking
surrounded
good
by a
for
half
Sash
circle
here.
of seats. Rebuilt by the Romans, they and the Hellenic Empire have long since gone, yet the theatre remains remarkably preserved. Though it is considered a tourist
These are
attraction,
both
it
really
is rarely
terrible,
crowded,
though.
and visitors can enjoy a relaxing stroll through its grounds. Fugo and Murolo were in the Teatro Greco. The rain beat down on the stones. The theatre was deserted. "Oh, phooey," Murolo said. "I was hoping to mingle with the tourists and attract less attention on our way into town, but I guess that's not happening. Stupid rain. We've come this far. No choice but to push on, dangerous or not." "Sometimes you sound careful. Sometimes you sound like you just don't give a damn what happens to you. I'd say you're adaptable, but it's more like you just stop thinking about things once a decision's been reached. Even though questioning all your decisions can be a vital survival tool. Or time wasted going in circles. Unless we've learned something new that changes things, the plan we arrived at earlier is still the best one we've got." "That's what I'm talking about, see? You've trapped yourself. You do it, Sheila E does it. You need to be more flexible, willing to change your mind." Murolo spoke like he was bestowing his knowledge, but he had little to back up his opinions. He came across like he just wanted to make himself sound important. He reminded Fugo of the professor who'd upended Fugo's life. "Be careful,"
Damn it.
Fugo growled. Murolo blinked at him. "Of what?" "You don't want to rub me the wrong way. Once I snap, I have no idea what I'll do." This wasn't a threat. He had a terrible temper, prone to exploding at the slightest provocation. He'd once stabbed Narancha in the cheek with a fork for getting a simple math problem wrong. He'd been tutoring Narancha for some time, and Narancha always got things wrong, but for some reason, that time he lost it. He had no idea why. Murolo pursed his lips. "Geez, you're a piece of work. Fragile, handle with care, do not disturb. They should hang signs on you, or make you go meditate on a mountain somewhere. For what?" He trailed off, staring not at Fugo, but at the seats surrounding the stage. His face had gone pale, and he looked like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. There was a man sitting all by himself in the seats. He had a black umbrella keeping the rain off him. He blended into his surroundings somehow, looking like he'd always been there. He was an old man with deep wrinkles, but his back was straight, his body fit. There was a gentle set to his face, but his eyes were much too sharp. Fugo had seen him before, in the photographs Murolo had shown him. Is that?" he stuttered. Murolo groaned. "It is. That's the leader of the narcotics team, Vladimir Kokaki." He was staring right at them. He'd been waiting for them. There was no way he was here by chance. Murolo spun around, looking this way and that, but there was no one else around. Not a trace of Kokaki's team. Shit. I guess we could. Murolo turned to suggest they run for it, but there was no one at his side. Fugo was walking in Kokaki's direction. Wait! We're doing this. It's too late to run." Fugo's voice showed no doubt, but no, he's not just some random old man. Even Diavolo decided he was better off negotiating an alliance than using his stand to keep him in line. He's experienced, a veteran, survived far more fights than you. Murolo's shrieks did nothing to slow Fugo's pace. Kokaki smiled faintly, like an old man watching his grandson. Fugo glared back at him, thinking furiously. He's confident. If he's here alone, he must have a good grasp on our stands already. He's sure he can win. If he gets within 5 meters of Purple Haze, he's done for no matter what. I doubt his stand will make any difference, and I don't imagine that's his plan, so he must be preparing a ranged attack. What I have to do is somehow close that gap and get within range. With that in mind, he started walking. This is a trap of some kind. I've got to somehow spring that trap and have Purple Haze break through it and get to him. This was the closest thing to a plan he had. Kokaki smiled.
Okay then, we're dead.
Then said, "I hear you were in classes with my boy Massimo at the Università di Bologna. Honestly, he doesn't have much good to say about you. Panna cotta, Fugo. It sounds like your life is a series of mistakes. What do you mean? I'm sure
Thought
you
I could
believe
hold
that
and
you are
use my
trying
other
to make
abilities
the
for a
right
better
choices.
and a better time,
But
but
even trying to do that is proof you are mistaken. He sounded like a teacher, patiently explaining something to a student who just didn't get it. All Sicilians know what life is. And this may be hard for a rich kid from Naples to grasp, but life is inherently unfair. Nothing in life goes as planned. You have to accept that. You'll never get anywhere if you don't. Even if nobody understands you, even if things don't turn out the way you expect, accept it. Losing your temper and taking it out on everyone around you is inexcusable. It prevents you from making anything of yourself. It leads you straight to ruin. We Sicilians place a great deal of value on silence. Silence and forbearance. Those two things lead to hope. Attempting to forge a life with your will alone is hopeless. Fortune is never that kind. There is no right choice, Fugo. Every time you make a choice based on what's right, you're making a mistake. Dreams and reality aren't that different, you know. The reality you believe in is just another delusion. As Kokaki finished speaking, Fugo was 5 meters away from him, almost at Purple Haze's range. He had only to take a single step, and he would be close enough to kill the old man with a single punch. But even at this range, Kokaki did nothing. If his stand were active, Fugo would be able to see it. Kokaki was an old man. Fugo was almost certainly faster on the draw and could strike first if he attempted anything. Except he didn't. What's going on? Fugo stopped moving forward. He was tensed to act at any moment, but hesitant to do so. Thoughts flooded his mind. Maybe he shouldn't kill Kokaki. If he wasn't going to resist, maybe they should capture him for questioning. Maybe he was just buying time for his team to escape. Each of these ideas floated past and were dismissed. He knew perfectly well they were all lies. He knew Kokaki was there to kill him, knew Kokaki had no intention of throwing the fight. He could see it in his eyes, but Fugo couldn't see what lay beneath that and was at a loss as to how to proceed. Why am I hesitating? Seeing that Fugo wasn't moving, Kokaki nodded slowly. You know so little, Fugo. Everything you think you know is shallow knowledge, only scratching the surface. You know nothing of courage, nothing of the strength men find when they cast aside their ego to live. Men without courage are like fleas, doomed to be slapped to death when they try to suck the blood of humans. Kokaki was smirking. He was insulting Fugo, but Fugo felt no stirrings of anger. Why wasn't he mad? If Narancha had been here, he'd have snapped and attacked long ago. Fugo was sure of it. Narancha! He wasn't angry or upset. A strange sort of irritation propelled him. He lunged forward and started scrambling up the slope to the seats. He staggered. The ground under his feet had crumbled. He caught himself quickly, but... Ugh! He tried to put his foot down, but it slid, and not naturally. It was like he tried to step on something that wasn't there, but he had looked down and picked a solid foothold. Before he worked out what had happened, his foot stomped down hard, and he lost his balance again. What
no.
the? He had no idea what he was doing. It was like he was caught in some uncontrollable dance, his feet stomping wildly in all directions. Oh, it has to be. His whole body felt like it was floating, as if the sensation of that misstep had never ended. No, it had grown stronger, echoing through his entire body. Is this his? Fugo was moving farther from Kokaki, like he was running backwards. His stand! It has to be! I'm caught in his stand's power. When did he attack? I didn't see anything, didn't sense it at all, didn't feel anything except... Fugo looked up. The rain, a fine mist that kept his body wet. He had seen it. He had felt it. He'd been aware of it all along. He'd been under attack the whole time. Yes,
God,
Kokaki said.
that
This
hits
is
so
rainy
hard.
day, Dreamaway. See how you stumble perpetually? My stand is not knocking you off balance each time. You are. Your own senses are out of whack, and you are desperately trying to regain your balance. For one brief moment you are off balance, and I lock that sensation in place. The more Fugo tried to stop his lurching dance, the more wildly his limbs flailed. My stand has the ability to lock any sensation. Humans are always sensing things. No matter how much they may not want to, they are always aware. I take any one instant and make it last forever. You will spend the rest of your life trying to regain your balance. You're trapped. Never again will you be free of that sensation. Ah! Ah! Oh! Fugo's body was leaning at an impossible angle and spinning around, but he never quite fell. He thought perhaps he'd stop if he managed to fall, but he couldn't do that. The sensation that accompanies tripping. What is it, do you think? Whoa! Whoa! Exactly! You're falling. You're trapped in the sensation that you've started to fall, and the only place that sensation leads to. Fugo did not hear the rest of what Kokaki said. His legs began stamping harder and harder, and faster they drove him in the same direction. He was falling sideways, propelled by his own strength. His legs touched the ground, but he was undoubtedly falling, traveling faster than he could ever run, flying across the ground, like he was challenging the limits of physics. Whoa! His scream faded as he left the Teatro Greco. How far would his legs take him? To the sea? To a wall? Either way, they would lead to death. Wanda! Kokaki said, and stood up, careful to keep the umbrella over him. Sheila-E heard Fugo screaming. Shit! She said, and broke into a run. But the scream was moving away from her faster than she could travel. As she ran, she reached the Teatro Greco. She stopped. An old man was climbing down the crumbling bank under the seats, looking right at her. He'd been expecting her. Kokaki! She yelped. Marolo came running over and hid behind him. What kept you? He shrieked accusingly. Where's Fugo? She asked. Kokaki answered. I took care of him. Sheila-E looked grim. This looked bad, but if she was inclined to give up this easily, she would never have been here. Voodoo child! She dashed forward, her stand lunging beside her toward the old man. Kokaki didn't move. Unlike Fugo, Sheila-E did not hesitate at all. She thought of nothing but slamming her fist into the old man's head. She cleared the gap between them in a moment, fist hurtling towards his face. But he leaned back a bit, avoiding it completely. He moved like a stalk of wheat in the wind, like a master of Tai Chi, stepping lightly sideways as Sheila-E hurtled past him. She spun around, facing him again. Kokaki had taken no damage from the punch, but when she had blown past him, Voodoo Child's fingernail had just barely scraped the side of his face. It was a tiny wound, like he'd cut himself shaving, but big enough for a pair of lips to form. Small, feminine lips. The lips softly exhaled, then sighed. What's this? Voodoo Child touches turn into lips, which spill all your secrets. Sheila-E pointed right at him. They'll drag up words from the depths of your heart. Words that will drive you mad. I've won. The lips on Kokaki's cheek twitched a few times, then began to speak, but the voice that emerged was not Vladimir Kokaki's.
I had a good life, Vladimir. I feel so very, very happy.
A bright, happy voice, filled with the pleasure of her experience, the emotion genuine. This was not a voice
wait,
that could ever be
no, I
taken
meant
as
to attack with
insulting or
Stolas.
gossiping. Sheila-E looked confused.
So I could enter charge and
His
attack.
head to one side,
So
watching.
what does it
I
matter?
see, he said, utterly calm. Your stand digs up the source of people's guilt, and you use that to rattle them. That's too bad. He ran his finger across the lips, and they were absorbed into him, vanishing completely, even though Sheila-E had not deactivated her power. As long as there is guilt in a man's heart, your power can never be removed, right? As long as there is guilt. But I have none. My heart deals only in facts, as it has always done. You can dig up all the voices you want, them all every day. A gentle smile spread across his face. That voice was my sister, Amelia's. Her last words to me. She died in my arms, left me with that. 1943, August the 6th, the day she died. Do you know what that date means? On that day, Sicily was a battlefield. The Allied forces had landed in territory controlled by the fascists and the Nazis. There was fighting everywhere. The Nazis never seriously intended to hold the island. They only fought to cover their retreat. The villagers were grateful for it, but as they retreated, they went after countless innocents they suspected of being spies. My family were targeted. My parents were shot to death. I ran for my life, carrying her on my back. He spoke without nostalgia, as if this was something that had happened yesterday and he was simply reporting the facts of it. As I ran, I thought I pissed myself. I was so scared I assumed the damp was my own fault. I didn't stop running, but it wasn't urine. It was blood from Amelia's wounds. She'd been hit by a stray bullet. Kokaki frowned and shook his head. Or perhaps she was shot in the back by a soldier as I fled. She took the bullet in my place. Because I was carrying her, she shielded me. I tried to treat her wounds, but it was too late. She had lost so much blood. She was so very young. She did not have the strength to survive it. As she faded, she started to babble, telling me how happy her life had been. She was hallucinating that she had escaped alive. In her delirium, she kept asking me if I was happy too. She could no longer see me, but I couldn't speak. All I could do was nod. That's when my stand first appeared. I was able to lock her delusion in place, ensure it never ended. She escaped into that hallucinatory future, lived to grow up and grow old, surrounded by grandchildren. The illusion never ended. An hour after her death, General Patton's forces passed me by. If they had been a little faster, she might have lived, but that was not her fate. Amelia had died with a smile on her face. She had smiled for just a minute or two, but that was 80 years' worth of joy. What difference is there between a dream and reality? The peaceful look in his eyes unnerved Sheila E. It reminded her of her dead sister's eyes. But that didn't change anything. This man was still her enemy. She grit her teeth and tried to attack. This time, he didn't move, didn't even try, simply let her attack all she wanted, but every punch missed. Huh? No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't hit him. She was already under his power. When Kokaki saw her expression,
Hello,
he
BJ
nodded.
Wolf.
For a fraction of a second, you felt like you couldn't beat me. I've locked that feeling away for all of time. You can try to attack me, try to resist, but you won't be able to. That's how Rainy Day Dream Away works. Can you free yourself? Do you have the mental fortitude to overcome
I don't know which
it?
one they're
This
using,
is not just my stand
and I have
story.
no real
This
way
is
of
the
knowing.
weight of Amelia's
I have
80
no.
years
There's
of
no easy way to
happiness.
do it. Or
You need
actually, probably
something
just
solid,
this.
something real driving you to break through all of that. No, impossible. Don't worry, Sheila E. I won't kill you. I have no reason to. Hide somewhere until our fight with Giorno Giovanna is over. However,
Weird.
Kokaki turned around. The same does not apply to you, Canolo Marolo. Marolo flinched, cowering. Stand name, Rainy Day Dream Away. Owner, Vladimir Kokaki, 70. Destruction, E. Speed, B. As fast as the brain. Range, A. Duration, A. Control, E. Potential, E. Power. Locks an idea, emotion, or sensation. Covers an area like a misty rain and can target anyone in that range. Once locked in, they can never escape. Someone with a minor illness might fleetingly wonder if it will kill them. If that thought is locked, it will. It uses an opponent's own mind against them, and no amount of distance between Kokaki and his targets will ever free them. For some reason, old memories flooded his mind. Memories from when Mista had joined them, their team fully formed, and they began to gain a reputation in the syndicate. Then one day, Fugo was summoned to Bucciolati's place alone. Hello? Fugo took a step into the room and froze. The mood in the room felt wrong. It was too quiet. The curtains were closed and it was dark outside, but there were no lights on. Bucciolati was sitting on the sofa in the living room. Fugo gingerly moved closer. Bucciolati? Bucciolati waved a single finger, signaling him to sit down opposite. Fugo did. He folded his hands on his lap, waiting for Bucciolati to speak, but he said nothing. In the silence, the faint ticking of an old clock sounded horribly loud. What's going on? Fugo was starting to panic. Bucciolati was always so decisive. It wasn't like him to delay. At last, Bucciolati stirred. Did you know, Fugo? For a moment, Fugo was confused. Then he knew what Bucciolati meant. About the drugs. I knew something was up. Abacchio and I checked into it. He paused to see how Bucciolati was taking this, but not a muscle on the man's face moved. The evidence suggests the boss has started his own narcotics trade. We hit up members of the gangs we'd taken out, assuming they were dealing again, but they just laughed. Said there was a new game in town. When we reported this to Polpo, his fat face went white as a sheet. He started shaking. Stay well clear of this, he said. Clearly the boss hadn't told him anything about it. I'm guessing the boss won't let Polpo in on the drug business to keep him from getting any more powerful than he already is. And Polpo realized this. It frightened him. He doesn't want the boss to see him as a threat. That's why Polpo didn't tell you. He didn't want us involved, so Fugo tried to explain further, but Bucciolati raised a hand. Enough. There was a frosty chill in his voice. Fugo stiffened. Is he gonna kill me? For a moment, he was sure he was. The tension in Bucciolati's voice was the kind you only heard when lives were at stake. But Bucciolati didn't move again. He simply sat, immobile, on his sofa. His face like marble, no trace of emotion, like the face of a porcelain doll. Fugo looked at the wall. There was a net hanging there. It was the fishing net Bucciolati's father had used. It was torn, unusable, but it served as a sign of the vow Bucciolati had made his father. Bucciolati had explained this once. Bucciolati's father died when he accidentally stumbled onto a drug deal and got shot. The wound proved fatal. That's why Bucciolati hates drugs so much. Fugo, Bucciolati said at last, put a record on. Fugo stood up. This was their signal. When Bucciolati wanted to be left alone, he would ask his men to put a record on. They were to leave as soon as it started. Bitches brew? This was Bucciolati's favorite. But Bucciolati shook his head. No, make it elevator to the gallows. Fugo was taken aback. Miles Davis was one of Bucciolati's favorites, but he'd once said he wasn't a fan of that particular album. He pulled the record from the shelf, took it out of its sleeve, and placed it on the turntable. He lowered the needle, and the melancholy sounds of a trumpet emerged from the speakers. It was an astounding performance, with resonance like grinding teeth as hard as you could, mixed with notes like sighs that never ended in service of a tune that was bewitchingly tragic. Fugo glanced over at Bucciolati and nearly gasped aloud. He had never seen Bucciolati look like that. It was like he was crying, but no tears emerged, like they'd dried up long ago. His lips were dry and colorless, his face pale, all brightness gone from his eyes, as colorless as a bottomless pit. Why was he remembering this now? At the time, Fugo had felt that Bucciolati was suffering, but would find the strength to overcome it. He had not been wrong. Bucciolati had continued to solidify his position in the syndicate, getting better and better at dealing with the contradictions involved. He need not have worried. So why was he remembering the look in his eyes? Because he knew. He knew Bucciolati was not okay. The look in his eyes was the look of a man who feels his very soul dying, and it was drugs that made him that way. That face. It. As he fell forever, Fugo felt an urge rising within him. A rigid, stony urge that entombed his heart, allowing nothing else in, filling his very soul. The same urge that had led him to beat the professor who'd sneered at his grandmother's death upside the head with a 4-kilogram dictionary. You, I will kill, Canolo Barolo. A man like you cannot be allowed to live. His umbrella held aloft. Kokaki began walking towards Marolo. Marolo scrambled backwards. He was too scared to turn his back and run, too scared to hit a fatal attack from behind, even if that lowered his chances of escaping at all. You knew, didn't you? You knew Risotto and the assassins were traitors. You set them up to fight Diavolo, and didn't care which of them won. He had almost reached him now. The only reason they even went up to Diavolo was revenge for the punishment their teammates had received when they tried to uncover
I killed
the
them
boss's
here so they don't have a
But
servant.
the one who leaked that information to Sorbet and Gelato in the first place was you, Barolo. I know. You put others in danger and do your best to watch from the safety of high ground. Help yourself to a share if you can. Toy with the fortunes of others, but never take responsibility. Men like you twist this world, but your twisted little life is about to end. I'm going to end it for you. He pointed at Marolo's hat. So, you've got a weapon in there, don't you? I can tell from the way you try and hide it. You've got something hidden under there. A gun, a knife, a bottle of acid, whatever it may be. Try and use it. Marolo's face twisted up in pain. He knew what would happen. When people try to use a weapon, they must always be careful. Careful not to shoot a gun. Careful not to cut their hand with a knife. And the moment he thought that, Kokaki would win. If he tried to attack, he'd destroy himself. So how could he fight? Kokaki had easily made an experienced fighter like Yyyy helpless. Marolo had no chance. He was sure the mission ended here. But then, thunder in the distance. A low rumbling from far away. But the clouds above them weren't storm clouds, and this mist of a rain was
Does this
Kokaki's
count
power,
as my opponent's
not a natural
effect?
weather phenomenon. Kokaki noticed it too. The thunder was getting closer. Kokaki's eyes widened in surprise. No,
Good.
no, he said, looking up. It sounded like thunder, but the sound never ended. It just got louder. He can't have. And not just louder, closer. Whatever was making that sound was hurtling towards them at terminal velocity, the speed of an object falling straight down.
This scene.
By the time the object was visible, it was too late. He used his stand to throw himself into the sky. For a moment, their eyes met, Vladimir Kokaki's and Panacotta Fute's, as the latter fell from the sky. The only time the sensation of falling ceased to matter was when he was actually falling from hundreds of feet in the air. Kokaki opened his mouth, but there was no time for him to scream. Fugo's stand was out in front of him, and it landed first. The noise came from it. The thunder was a roar of titanic rage. The stand's fist hit Kokaki, and the virus was released. The old man's brittle neck snapped from the impact of the blow, but the virus didn't care.
Yikes.
It infected instantly, incubated, multiplied, and devoured.
That was depressingly bad luck on their part as well.
Exploded, then vanished,
It
like a
also wasn't a
somersault.
very powerful deck
One
they were
touch
playing.
from Purple Haze meant death.
Unfortunately, this looks very
This was
outdated.
Panacotta Fugo's stand.
One
He
per turn
jumped
ability
forward,
to
and
get rid of a
child
Signy
caught
is pretty
Fugo
good.
as he fell. He made no plans for how to break his fall, and in a suicidal attack had quickly
no, wait.
thrown himself into the air. So the
Once
impact
per
of
turn
its
ability
dagger,
to enter
she
charge.
stumbled, but found the strength to stay upright. Relieved,
I didn't wait.
she
What were they
straightened up,
playing?
and a hand wrapped around her throat. Fugo's
I
hand.
think they were
He was
I think
strangling her
private.
like he meant to kill her. Yyyy started to panic. Stop! Enough! Rolla. She looked to him